Greetings from the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. We have been hard at work trying our best to understand this very upsetting global situation. 3 billion people struggle with hunger, and yet $40 trillion sits in illicit tax havens. 22 of the world's richest men have more money than all the women in Africa, which means 22 men have more money than 325 million women in Africa. Such an abomination, such cruelty. Our work at Tricontinental is rooted in these dilemmas of humanity. We wish there were more attention paid to these dilemmas, our social wealth turned over to address them rather than to the fantasy of global hegemony and warfare. This talk I'm giving you today at the No Cold War platform is called Brexit? Really? But by the end of it, you'll see why I've called it that. Before I get into the talk, I want to tell you about a series of articles that were jointly produced by Morning Star, Tricontinental, Globetrotter, and the Peace and Justice Project. These articles were written by Manolo de los Santos, Prashant Radhakrishnan, Kate Hudson, Marco Fernandez, Nora Garcia, Nontobeko Hlela, Claudia Webb, Jeremy Corbyn, Roger Mackenzie, and I. They will be put together in a booklet in English, Portuguese, Spanish, and published in a few weeks. Please look out for them. These articles combined make a powerful argument on behalf of a world that is not dominated either by one country or by two blocs. We want to live in a global democracy, not in a world of domination and of walls. I'm speaking to you from Mexico, where President Andrés Manuel López Obrador declined to participate in US President Joe Biden's Summit of the Americas. Why did AMLO, that's what the Mexican president is known as, his initials, why did AMLO make this decision? Because the United States hosted a summit of the hemisphere while excluding Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Bolivia and Honduras joined Mexico in boycotting Biden's summit. They are in favor of a genuine regionalism, one that is anchored in the process called CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. This is a regionalism that seeks to better the people of the hemisphere and not to allow one or two countries to dominate the entire region. The Americas is where the United States imposed the Monroe Doctrine 100 years ago next year. This Monroe Doctrine gave the United States the authority, or rather it was authority that the United States gave to itself to dominate the entire hemisphere. Biden's summit was a fiasco. That's as it would be, given that the mood across the world is no longer in favor of US hegemony. This mood I'm talking about is not only against US hegemony in places you'd expect, such as in China and in Cuba, but also in places such as Australia, India, and Japan, three countries that make up the Quad, the US project to encircle China. These countries, Australia, India, Japan, don't want anything to do fully with this imposition of US hegemony. Now, no longer just the Monroe Doctrine for the Americas, but a global Monroe Doctrine with talk of global NATO, or in their case, Asian NATO, and other such hallucinations. Australia's people recently rejected the right-wing government and brought back the Labour Party. It's not perfect, of course, but still rational about the fact that Australia's principal trade partner is China, and that any anti-China moves will demolish Australia, in the same way as Europe is struggling with the war in Ukraine, struggling economically in terms of inflation and so on. India and Japan continue to trade with Russia, increasing investments in Russia's oil and natural gas projects. They have openly said that they're unwilling to toe the line put forward by the United States. The global Monroe Doctrine is not for them, nor is an Asian NATO, the other name for the Quad. They'll remain members of the Quad, yes, but they will not be reckless in accelerating dangerous warfare. That's the mood I was talking about. You can read more about it in the third briefing from No Cold War, which will be out in the Tricontinental newsletter on Thursday, the 16th of June. The United Kingdom, by the way, shifting to the UK, the United Kingdom is on its own planet. We heard a lot about Brexit. The enemy was Brussels. Turns out that the Leave camp in the United Kingdom was only against one address in Brussels, that of the European Union. The UK wanted to be free of the regulatory framework of the European Union. But the United Kingdom is not only happy with the other address in Brussels, but it's one of its keenest advocates, and that's the address of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And those of you who don't know, it's headquartered in Brussels, in Belgium. NATO, as we know, is not really a European platform. It's a Trojan horse of US power. And the UK is the poodle of US ambitions. So the Leave campaign's Brexit was half-baked. Leave the European Union trade framework, but be sucked further into NATO belligerence. The UK claimed that Brexit was about the exercise of its sovereignty. But we can see that the UK continues to have its military sovereignty exercised from Washington, D.C. You want a real Brexit? Then leave your poodle-like subordination to the United States. Nobody wants to imagine the full implications of the encirclement of Russia and China by the United States and its allies, including the United Kingdom. Even countries that are closely allied with the United States, such as Germany and Japan, recognize that if a new Iron Curtain descends around China and Russia, it would be fatal for their own countries. Already the war and sanctions have created political crises in Honduras, Pakistan, Peru, and Sri Lanka, with others to follow as food and fuel prices rise astronomically. War is too expensive for the poorer nations. Spending for war is eating into the human spirit, and warfare itself increases people's general sense of despair. The war makers are the idealists. Their wars do not settle the major dilemmas of humanity. The ideas of non-alignment and peace, on the other hand, are realistic. Their framework, the framework of non-alignment and peace, this framework has answers to the children who want to eat and to learn and to play and to dream. We are the real realists. Thanks a lot.